Welcome back, everyone, to round 8 of Lille Regionals. We are getting to the close of this tournament, and players are on their winning ends and trying to battle their way into day 2. I am joined by the lovely Freya next to me once again for my final round of the day. Freya, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, so again, towards the end, it's been a long, exhausting day, but these are, as we always say when it comes to these rounds, these are the nail-biter matches, right? We're at the point where we're starting to figure out who's going to make their way into day 2, who's not, and we're starting to get an idea of what the real success stories, both player-wise and deck-wise, coming out of this tournament are going to be.
Definitely. I had a really good game against Regis and Kurum last time round. Both players ended up tying, meaning both of them were into day 2. I'll ask you, Freya, the same thing I asked Ross. You've been around for a very long time. Plenty of day 2s, some top 16s at Worlds. What would be your advice to those players going into day 2 tomorrow?
To treat it like you would any other tournament, right? The best way to approach any tournament is usually like one day at a time. I think into day 1 you can make an argument that if because there's 2 different approaches to day 1, right? You can say, I'm going to win as many games as possible, that way my day 2 I don't have to worry as much about winning. Or you can say, okay, I might go for like an intentional draw in the later rounds, just because if I get to that threshold of the 19 points for day 2, that means I'm guaranteeing myself more rounds and more chances to play myself into the top 8. But once you're in day 2, you got to treat every single game individually.
Definitely, yeah. I think obviously we're coming to the end of the tournament. You did a meta breakdown for us yesterday with Ross. Has that played out how you thought it was, or have there been some surprises in that?
I don't think anything has been too surprising. We can actually sort of compare here against the results from Salt Lake City to see sort of how it's evolved. And I think, honestly, yeah, comparing the 2, it does feel like it's just been a continued, maybe even like an evolution, just like a continuation of that meta game from what we've seen so far, at least.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about these regionals at the minute is there's a gap, sort of big event, gap, big event, right? So there's not much development time between them. So we sort of see these continuations of these stories. You know, Tor doing very well once again with the deck he did well with in Peoria, carrying on those wins. Coming into this regional, it looks like he's posed to make day 2 now, and of course Regis once again showing a good performance.
Yeah, so like yeah, and of course you could make an argument as well with Tord is that he could have been part of the meta story with Salt Lake City as well. Of course, that was most recent regionals in the US, but he wasn't there because he can't do every American regionals, right?
No, of course not. Of course not. It's better to stay close to home sometimes.
Yes.
You know? Sure, it was a lot less strenuous for him to get there. But one thing we wanted to mention before this round is the top 22 race. A subplot of the season, top 22 invites to Worlds, paid invites to Worlds from TCPI. How generous of them, of
I know,
course.
right?
And at the minute, top 16 race for a stipend to go to Australia. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so throughout the course of the year, there is this system where essentially in the lead up to an internationals, you earn points and you can get a travel stipend or travel award entirely if you're in the top 4 for the next internationals. And this plays out throughout the year. Top 4 gets a travel award, top 16 gets a travel stipend. But then the big prize to go for is, of course, in Europe, that top 22 position where the top 22 players on championship points throughout the whole course of the season get that sort of day 2 invite to Worlds, where, as you mentioned, not only is your accommodation covered and your travel covered, but you get to skip the first day of the tournament, which is huge. Which is huge.
Obviously, gaining an advantage, all the knowledge from the first day, being able to swap and change things in your deck to make sure you've got a more favourable day 2. But most of all, Yokohama Worlds this year. I'm sure there are going to be people biting at the hand for the opportunity for top 22 this year. Do you think that adds more to it? Do you think that adds more hype?
Oh, of course it does, especially for everyone because I guess it's a slightly different factor for players in Europe and the US, right? Because generally speaking, players in the US, they're used to Worlds being in the US, yes. So that's where it's been most years. And so obviously it's still a special event, but it's not like it doesn't have the quite same level of, I guess, not like exoticness, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, prestige, going abroad, having a holiday with it, all the rest.
Yes. But this year was different, of course, because it was in London for the first time, so all the US players and North American players got to experience going to like a different continent to Worlds for the first time, and now it's going to be the same again for the European players and the North American players, and for once, the Japanese players got to be pretty happy. They're thinking, oh, I don't have to pay, I don't have to, go very, very far to get to Worlds is actually on home soil.
I think the great part is as well is that Worlds is only the real time in the season that us in Europe and North America, LATAM, get to see the Japanese players in action, obviously playing on a separate circuit to us and stuff. So there's going to be lots more of them. There's going to be a lot more friends to meet and things like that in Yokohama, and the home of Pokemon as well, taking us over there.
Actually, you mentioned that. The Worlds being in Japan is also going to be a lot easier on the players from Oceania as well, because although it is a long flight, time zone-wise, it's just like a straight line up, right?
Exactly,
so, yeah,
exactly.
makes it a lot easier.
That's great. So that's definitely another plot that you're going to want to achieve. Obviously, we've got a couple of players here today chasing that top 16 for Oceania. Again, playing off your experience in tournaments, you'll find yourself in positions where you can get points and you can get day 2 and everything else. What do you think the most important part of being consistent is? What do you think comes into the most? Is it just lots of testing? Is it a good testing group? Or being comfortable with the deck you're playing over multiple tournaments?
Yes.
Yes to all of those.
Yeah, it's all of those. And it's recognizing as well, this is something I've talked about over previous times, the best deck in a vacuum might not necessarily the best deck for you to play at a given tournament, because if there's a deck that is obviously still good enough to be competitive, you're not going to win a tournament with a theme deck, of course, but if there's a deck that is good enough...
What do you mean? I could win a tournament with a theme deck.
I'd like to see
like
you...
a league challenge or something.
Fair enough. I'll hold you to that. But, you know, in an environment where you're going to be facing, you know, so many rounds of Swiss, so many different decks, if you're playing a deck that is still, you know, competitively viable, but also is one that you know through and through, then you're more likely to be able to do well with that than a deck that might be objectively, you know, slightly better, but you misplay with it throughout the day because you're not very well versed with it.
Of course, and I think all of those important, but now we are finally cutting over to our round 8 match. We have a really well-known player in Fabian Puyol against Christian Tuomi. Apologies again for any mispronunciations. And another big swing of the Titans with Pelkia V-Star versus Mew VMAX.
Yeah, Fabian Puyol, of course, going to be a familiar face to some of you, not just from previous tournaments, but also you might have seen him today interviewed by myself, funnily enough, talk about how he is one of the homegrown heroes here. Literally works at a card shop not too far from this venue as well.
Really?
So
I didn't know that. That's quite cool.
So Fabian, very, very much a local to the scene, but a well-known player worldwide, insanely skilled at the game, has had many a result to his name, and on the track to make it a day 2 here at his own regionals.
Yeah, of course, and I mean, it's always got to feel sweeter when you're at home, right? Of course, I would love to win a UK regional. There's never any in Wales, unfortunately, so I can't quite do that. But I think London, Liverpool, Sheffield, wherever they usually are, would be good enough.
Liverpool's not too bad, to be fair.
It's not too bad. It's probably the closest one that they have. I think Sheffield's definitely the furthest away. That one's a bit of a drag. But yeah, it's got to mean a little bit more. Obviously, we talked about Steph Ivanov this morning, our previous Lille champion. Maybe there's an opportunity here for Fabian to take it forward this time.
Yeah, quite possibly. Stefan, funnily enough, also being our other sort of interview feature throughout the day. Now, as for the 2 decks, we can see that it's the 2 decks that we have seen before on the stream. So it's going to be Palkia against Mew VMAX. Not seen many Mews over the course of the stream, but this Christian decided to rock with it here. And like Palkia, just one of those decks that just doesn't go away.
No, of course. I think that Mew has definitely shown its merit over a number of tournaments now. Incredible results, especially when we were sort of in that era of online play. Mew found itself very, very dominant, and it will continue here to show its class. Obviously, at 5-1-1, it's done well today. And, Palkia, looking into Mew, it can be quite a favourable matchup for Palkia, being a 2-prize deck, hitting into a 3-prizer, but it just depends on what sort of techs Christian's playing. And of course, we're looking at the prizes now as well. The Quick Shooting Inteleon makes an appearance once again, but this time it's in the prizes. 2 Drizzile may make the mid-game a little bit slow. And of course, on the other side of the board, 2 Battle VIP Pass prized already, making that turn 1 VIP Pass a little bit less likely, but not impossible.
Not impossible, especially not for a deck like Mew, right? Mew is one of those decks that basically draws 1 billion cards turn 1, so...
What, exactly 1 billion?
Yeah, more than there are, like, probably... I was going to say more than there are Pokemon cards in existence, but if I think about it, because the amount that have been printed, you never know.
You never know. You never know. You get up there. And looking at it now, we've just got the deck list through. So we are looking as well at the DTE version of Mew, so not the Fusion Strike Mew. Another twist in this tale, obviously Fusion Strike Mew for the longest time being the dominant force, and all of a sudden at one of the American regionals, this new sort of version of the deck came along, blew everyone out of the water, and of course, it's here now to stay by the looks of things.
Yes, very, very much so. And it is interesting because we have seen, Fusion Mew still being played as well, but to me, it's evident that the Fusion Strikeless version of the deck is, like you just said, the one that's probably around to stay for longest, and certainly the one that's seeing more success recently.
Yeah, and Christian on his first turn, not great for Mew. You know, he got 2 Genesect down, drawing through his deck a little. You did get the attachment, which is what Mew wants to see. Obviously, you're only playing 4 of those energy. It can be a little bit harder to see them than perhaps in the Fusion Strike deck where you play 6. The 2 Genesect down as well, being able to draw next turn. But Christian not hitting all the things that he wants on their first turn. And of course, the Sobble down, attaching a water energy. And it looks like keep calling straight away.
Yes, and of course, it's not a bad thing to do turn 1, going second, not at all. You want to get all your Sobbles down, but there wasn't much else to go with it, and that's like the only kind of sad part for Fabian here. It's keep calling without a power cure or without anything else. So, yeah, from that perspective, at least not ideal, especially considering how we know how the Mew deck works, and if Fabian was to get a power cure down next turn, it will not be difficult for Christian to just, you know, KO it.
Of course not. I think, as we were saying earlier, Mew, the king of KOing 2 prize Pokemon,
yes.
Plenty of Gust in the deck, drawing countless cards in turn, meaning that it can both see cards and Gust in the same turn, which we all know how powerful that is. And it looks like at the start of the turn, it's just a Genesect and a Pelpad, get that boss back in the deck. And it doesn't look like Christian's got too much room in his hand to be drawing more cards with the Genesect. It seems pretty clogged up right now. We're going to have to see if anything can be removed from his hand to see if we can get a few more draws out of this.
Yeah, it looks like just a Pelpad and then maybe drawing 1 card, it looks like, for thinking about whether there's another thing that can be done, the Power Pad putting a boss's orders back into the deck, which is something that obviously Christian wants back anyway, so that's all gravy. But seriously debating whether to play another card before doing this second Fusion Strike system. What is Christian debating on? Oh, Lost Vacuum.
Choosing to play Lost Vacuum, getting rid of a card out of their hand, obviously going straight into the Lost Zone, and of course then the Stadium following along with it. Getting rid of those tablets, not something you want to be forced into doing.
No.
And unfortunately, seeing that Battle Void VIP pass put on the wrong turn.
Yes, really would have rather seen that turn 1. But there is an Ultra Ball there as well, so that is a good find. Can maybe do the Trekking Shoes first to draw another card, and then Ultra Ball the whole hand away to get another Genesect and draw again.
Nice on the crossroads. That's another thing you don't really want to discard.
No, but not really much of a choice here. And then
another Trekking Shoes, getting to dig a little bit deeper. The Avery hasn't played a draw supporter this turn. It could be useful in his hand, but as you said, perhaps draw that Ultra Ball, getting rid of the whole hand and drawing some more cards might be a little bit better.
Yeah. So
and he does opt to Avery.
Yeah. So
there's only 3 Sobble on the bench, so no discard needed from Fabian.
No,
but the Avery does still get the draw 3.
Yeah, and looks like after that, going to be a Rotom Phone, one of the cards found off of the Avery. 5 cards there, and finding a Mew off top of that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Rotom Phone, this is one of those decks, it's this and Kyurem, isn't it, where it gets that really nice synergy, being able to see the top card of your deck quite often as well through Genesect in this, and of course Oranguru in Kyurem, and Kyurem's ability to get the water energy. But right now, exactly, he gets the Mew, he knew he needed a second attacker down, and of course being able to draw that with Genesect is easy as pie, no problem.
Yeah, so here we go with the Ultra Ball now. Going to find another Genesect, but now with the Mew down as well, and a completely empty hand, the Fusion Strike system will be drawing 5 cards, which is a lot closer to what you really want to be doing with the Fusion Strike system.
It's definitely what I'm used to seeing from this deck. You are used to Mew being quite consistent, especially this version. You're not sort of caught up in hiccups of having to elicit Sparkle on your first couple of turns. You're able to play actual draw supporters such as the Avery we just saw. And seeing a second Lost Vacuum here, they do play a full count of the 2, which is more than we've seen all day. Usually it's just a one-off tech, but 2 in this, making sure that Path just really cannot shut this deck down. And of course then playing the Lost Cities as well to make sure that it's just really not susceptible to Path. However, Fabian does play the 1 Path in his deck, meaning that at some point in the game I imagine he's going to try and use that as a strategy to stop the Mew from attacking.
Yes.
However, we know that Christian's got a few answers for that.
Yeah.
And a knockout on the Sobble to end the turn.
Yeah, so Christian having a pretty decent turn 2, all things considering in the start especially. Fabian on the back foot for sure, and having just go straight for the Marnie after that.
Yeah, I don't ever dislike Marnie against Mew. Obviously you're sending their hand back in, and if you are able to combine it with a Path, you can sort of lock them out, and they're sort of stuck with the 4 cards that they have. They don't play a lot of draw supporters in the deck outside of things like Avery, maybe a Marnie that they have. So it's often a key strategy of the Palkia deck to try and beat it.
Yes. And the Capacious Bucket coming in strong as ever just to... Oh, and Fabian's also preparing a Palkia V, so obviously got something else in mind. Is that from an Irida, I guess, or just a preemptive quick ball?
There is an Irida in hand, so you'd imagine that is where there's going. And a quick ball that also gets our Palkia V out as well. That hitting the deck straight away. Fabian's going to need a few attackers to get through this Mew, unfortunately. It can't all be done with Sobbles, so that's going to have to come down. So I feel like Fabian's in a position now where one Palkia is not going to do the job. I think he needs a second one down this turn to ensure the fact that he's going to still have an attacker when the turn comes back to him.
Yes. So Palkia down, another Palkia down.
Another Palkia down.
Very important, of course.
Of course.
With Christian being able to so easily pick off, bench 2 prizes, there's got to be at least 2 down to make sure 1 survives. Even if, as we discussed so many times before, there's 1 there with an energy looking very, very much like bait.
Yeah, very much like bait. There's a big target on that Palkia right now, and I'm sure that Christian will be looking for those boss's orders, looking for those custom catchers, being able to seek out the Palkia into the active. He doesn't want to have to go through Sobbles. Of course, he's already taken 1 prize, so taking another 1 prize isn't too much of a big deal. But if you can get rid of that threat of the Palkia early on, he's definitely going to want to prefer to do that.
Yeah, and I must confess, I'm feeling a little bit blinded by Christian's deck right now. Look at the amount of gold going on, everyone.
There's an incredible amount of gold in here. You can tell. I feel like a lot of Mew players, Mew's the deck I see blinged out the most often. I feel like people have been very loyal to it and played it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I'll spend a bit more money in this bit. I've been playing this for a while.
Like
so
everything gold, full art, reverse hollowed. I mean, this basically looks like is a near enough max rarity, unless you count like alternative arts. But I think you could also consider that just like a artistic preference.
Really strong Genesect here, coming into those 2 catchers that we just mentioned. Obviously, Mew on the bench having free retreater, even without the Mew VMAX, we are able to jump in and out of a Mew. The only thing being is the Mew is going to need some sort of choice belt or a damage burst, such as a tablet, which I think is in hand to be able to get through this Palkia.
Yes, so Christian maybe debating which one he wants to use. I think the cross switcher probably has more merit purely on the basis of you need to get that Mew VMAX out of the active to make sure that you can attack again. So there is that going on, but actually just going for a Ultra Ball first, it looked like.
Looks like it was a quick ball.
Oh,
Quick ball in hand off of the Genesect. But either way, that power tablet hitting the discard. Obviously, me knowing that you need that power tablet to perhaps take a knockout on the Palkia. Maybe not the line that Christian's going for. Maybe opting to go for something else here. Looking at that Mew, obviously a quick ball cannot grab that Mew VMAX, so that's being shuffled back into the deck. And it'll be interesting to see whether the custom catches come down this turn. There are going to be more draws available through Genesect as well for Christian to be able to access more cards. So we'll have to see what he gets off those and see how this plot thickens.
I mean, if there were custom catches, the plot really would thicken considering how old that card is.
Fusion.
You could cross switcher, of course.
Cross switcher, of course. I'm going to have it doing that today. It's all the old cards. It's my favourite format. I'm going back to cross.
I mean, it's also another card where you play 2 at the same time to do it. So it's easy to see where it lies. In any case, Ultra Ball 1 more time, discarding. Was that a Lost Vacuum, it looked like?
Yes, a Lost Vacuum. That's the second one now. 1 already played, 1 hitting the discard off that Ultra Ball. Grabbing that Mew VMAX that Christian was eyeing up earlier, meaning that this switch out will be a lot easier.
Yes.
And the band to the active Mew and the Genesect drawing in, hoping to hit another power tablet here.
And looks like does not find it.
Not received. However, more cross switches drawn as well. Lots of gust. And an attack with the Mew. Is that KO? 190?
With the choice belt, 220, yeah.
Yeah, 220, exactly.
Yeah, it is exactly enough. So, yeah, and Christian just doing, although it looked like there was no retreat going on, there's 2 identical Mews on the field. So essentially, Christian just said, I'm going to retreat between these and take the KO. So everything's above board here. No, nothing to worry about that.
Everything's above board. I'm sure there is nothing going on like that. Just a little bit of a miscalculation from me. And Irida coming down, really important card in these Palkia decks, being able to grab 1 water Pokemon and an item card. The Palkia V-Star most probably hitting the board here in order to access an attacker for Fabian, and then an item, maybe perhaps to get him another attacker. Of course, we mentioned that Mew's got a really big habit of picking off of these 2 prize Pokemon. Fabian's going to have to find something else to do after this Palkia attacks as well, but opting for the Crobat in the end.
Yeah, and getting that off of the quick ball, discarding a Lost City, interestingly enough. Probably thinking, I mean, Lost City is not really something that does a huge amount against Mew. Say if you're worried about countering their own Path to the Peak, because some Mew players play that now, that would be a consideration, but I think we've already seen Christian get rid of his own Path to the Peak, so Fabian can discard that Lost City pretty safely.
Yeah, of course. As you said, no real merit here in this matchup. The Crobat drawing up for the maximum 6, lovely, and we're seeing Drizzile, scoop up net, path to the peak. It's going to look nice. And the one-off for a Candy in this deck as well. That's becoming a popular inclusion in Palkia as well to be able to get in that Inteleon. And of course the Drizzile comes down, going back in for another trainer card. Fabian really trying to access an attack at the end of this turn. The other Palkia V hitting the bench as well, meaning he's got a follow-up attacker for the following turn.
Also, my Cardot connoisseur senses are tingling as I see Fabian's actually gone for the Holon Phantoms rare candy art there. So very, very old school, absolutely gorgeous card.
Very old. Unfortunately, it's way before my time. I'm far less experienced than yourself, so good knowledge there, but it's all props. You could have told me it was anything, and I'd believe you, to be honest with you.
I mean, it was what was it, 2006, I believe. That's when Holon Phantoms was, or 5, one of those two.
And the star portal here, just a sticky note as the V-star counter here, but clearly flipped over there. No V-star available anymore. That star portal able to get the 2 energy on his active Pokemon to attack, and only 1 to the bench for Palkia, but it does mean just 1 energy attachment next turn will activate that attacker. And the Mew now taking a bit of damage, not knocked out yet, but one of the big merits of Mew is it can heal itself if it wants to.
Yes, it can, but can Christian actually viably pull that off this turn is the question. I mean, I guess if there is because
can't use Mew's attack currently.
No, that's what I was trying to see, because I couldn't see a Mew V on the bench, and the benches are full, so it's not really viable to go for, unfortunately, right now.
And
but
those other cross switches that Christian luckily drew into, activating that bench knockout again, bringing the other Palkia into the active, being able to hit that 220 on the dot again. Amani as well, locking Fabian's hand a little bit, hoping that he can't draw anything meaningful to be able to take the last 3 prizes he needs. Christian starting to establish himself in this game. 2 power tablets off that as well, meaning that his next knockout is going to come a little bit easier as well.
Also, I was wrong, because I do believe I see there a pass to the peak in Christian's hand, so that must mean that he's not used it yet, because I'm fairly sure he only plays 1.
Does only play 2 passes to the
peak.
Oh,
he plays 2? Okay, so...
2,
okay,
2.
That's why then, okay.
And 1 Lost City, so there it is. It's the different flip of those.
Yes, so...
Lost City gone, 1 path in hand, and then obviously 1 in the discard, as you thought there was earlier.
And then Christian just thinking things through before he takes this knockout. This will, of course, put him on only 1 prize left to win the game. And considering Fabian's not taking a single prize yet, you've got to think Christian's in a pretty good position to win.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, obviously, the thing with these VMAXs is it does take 3 full prizes for the knockout. So you usually think that, obviously, if you can get through a couple of them, you already win the game just by taking 2 of them out. But obviously taking that 1, you're already all the way down to 3. But when Christian sat on just 1 prize card left, we know that he has a boss available to him in deck as well. So it's going to be quite easy for this Mew to take the last prize.
Yes, so Palkia going into the active, card drawn for the turn for Fabian, another Palkia V going onto the bench, but and Roxanne. So
Roxanne, of course.
Yeah.
One of those big key things about going to 3 prizes or below is Roxanne becomes active. Shuffle both players' hands into the deck. Your opponent draws only 2 cards and you draw 6. A bit of draw support for yourself, hoping you can hit the things that you need, but also the main purpose, disrupting your opponent a little bit, perhaps but delay in this end game.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I thought Fabian had a path to the peak in hand before the Roxanne, so I'm not quite sure why he didn't play it down, if he did, or maybe he just didn't and I sort of misinterpreted that. But in any case, Evolution Incense means that if it was or if it wasn't in hand, then it will be soon, because that, of course, is going to be able to get some more shady dealings going, and that will find the path to the peak back to the hand.
Of course, that Inteleon coming down again, gracing our screens with its presence, being able to grab 2 trainer cards. That's going to be the Capacious Bucket, and as you said, Freya, path to the peak.
Yes, this is absolutely vital. This is the way that you can try and beat Mew in the early game especially, but in the late game, this is what you got to do. So path being picked up by Fabian from the shady dealings along with the Capacious Bucket, as you said. I imagine that would be water energy going onto the bench Palkia V, and then a path to the peak going down with a Roxanne Christian. Fabian has done all he can to try and cement his comeback here, and now it's just going to be on Christian to find an out. Yeah,
hanging on by the strings here for Fabian. He's put himself in a good position to try and prevent the Mew VMAX from getting what it needs. Of course, there are 2 on the board, so he's able to move those around quite freely as well. Fabian not taking a knockout yet, so even if 1 goes down, Christian at least has 1 more turn to try and close out this game. Does he hit what he needed off of the 3 cards he's gained?
Oh my goodness, okay. Roxanne, and then Christian said, no, you.
obviously a mirror play there. Christian telling Fabian.
Wait, no, you can't do that. Yeah, Fabian only has like 6 prizes left.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. And I believe that
Fabian has shuffled in already.
Oh dear.
Well, this could be a complicated one.
Yeah, I guess Christian just must have assumed that the knockout was taken, but of course it wasn't. Palkia's not doing enough damage, so.
Of course,
yeah.
I think also as well, when you're in a position in the game and you know that there's only a few cards that you need left to try and close it out.
Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunate situation, but obviously we're just gonna have to let this one resolve, and we will update you on this ongoing situation as it develops. So, in the meantime, I guess let's talk about the game so far. So, to me, it's very clear that Christian had like a commanding lead on that game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that early on we saw perhaps that the Palkia didn't come down turn 1. We were talking very early on in the game about Mew's ability to just take 2 prizes off the board really quickly with all the gust that it plays. And it's really easy for Mew to access those as well. I think that that's the biggest talking point here, right? Genesect being able to just draw through the deck. You know, you're halfway through your deck, usually by the end of turn 1, at the bottom of your deck by the end of turn 2, and you have access to so many different cards in that time. And so Mew having a base damage as well of 210, obviously minus 20 from the DTE attached to it, but even at 190 turn 2, you can really pose a threat to any of your opponent's 2 prizes, and I feel that Mew really excels in those matchups.
Yeah, it really, really does. And I mean, funnily enough, it's also something that Palkia excels at, right? Both these decks kind of excel on picking off like smaller prizes from the bench to some extent, and because Palkia only really gets into like one-shot territory and other V-stars when there are full benches on both sides, and that tends to only really happen later on in the game. So when 2 of those decks kind of like clash against each other, it makes for a very interesting dynamic. Yeah,
it's sort of it's again sort of this exchange of blades. It's this cat and mouse as we were talking about earlier, me and you, that, you know, both decks are trying to do similar things. Obviously, Mew needs a large bench in order to draw all of those cards, you know, those Fusion Strike systems. You want to use multiple to get the things you need. Mew playing lots of weird counter cards because it knows it's going to be able to have access to those. But at the same time, you're feeding Palkia damage, 20 for each of those bench Pokemon. And then, of course, Palkia's taken 3 whole prizes for a KO on Mew.
And, of course, with that sort of usual wombo combo of, like, full benches on both sides plus Choice Belt, that's 290 that Palkia's doing, throw in 1 quick shooting Teleon, that's 310, and that knocks out a Mew VMAX.
Of course. And of course, those quick shootings can come mid-turn as well. It doesn't even have to be end turn. So you could hit into a Mew VMAX. You know, for example, on that board state there, we didn't see a Mew V at that point. So it wouldn't have been a possibility for one of those Mews to shuffle itself back into the deck, heal itself. So that 290 would have stayed. And then we could have seen a scenario play out where the Palkias hit into the next Mew, quick shoot in the other one, 3 prizes mid-turn, had access to some more cards, 3 extra cards that turn, and then tried to knock out the lead Palkia as well.
And of course, Christian's thinking, if all that happened, then maybe I actually could have played the Roxanne and not incurred a, you know, a potentially unfixable game state.
Of course, of course. I mean, as I was going to touch on that point before we started cutting over to us, that, you know, in Christian's position, you've got to feel for him in the fact that, you know, you get 2 cards, you're potentially locked out of the game with Path, and you see a card, you're like, oh yeah, I can draw some things, you know, I can get 6 new cards, and it sort of instantly play out of excitement. You know, it's unlikely you're going to get out of that situation. All of a sudden, you're able to. So you play that without thinking, and then, unfortunately, it was the wrong time to do it. Fabian not having taken any prizes. And, of course, here we are. But one point I want to touch on as well, both of these players, again, are in a position where if they lose this game, they still can make day 2. So it's not the end of the world. So going into, let's, you know, scrap game 1, pretend it didn't happen. Based on what we just saw, who do you think's got the upper hand here?
To me, I mean, the obvious answer would be Christian. We saw that 5 prize lead does speak for itself. But I also know for a fact that, you know, these 2 decks are good enough to beat each other. Like, it's not one of those things where it's a, you know, massively favored matchup one way or the other. Obviously, Mew has a lot of speed going for it, and that is to its advantage. I think a lot of times it's one of those matchups where whoever goes first really can do a big number. Apart from Mew going second, well, maybe not in this build particularly, but before, Mew going second with like Meloetas could do 210 turn 1, and that could be like, you know, devastating for a setup on a Palkia deck. But with this version of the deck, not so much, because of the way that it's obviously you attack with only the cross fusion strike with the double turbo energy.
Of course, I think now, while we're waiting for this judge call to be resolved, it might be a perfect time to talk about this sort of split of fans between these two Mew decks. You were talking about one of the main merits there of the fusion strike Mew, obviously being able to have those fusion energies, that Meloetta being able to do 210 damage, potentially 280 even, if you're really lucky and all of the energy comes aboard, as early as turn 2 on V-Stars, V-Pokemon, and even with a band 310, you can knock out opposing Mews, potentially, if they're there and the potential's there. So what do you think the main merits for playing the DTE version are over that?
Well, I mean, before I say that, I'll make one addendum, is that 210 is actually possible on turn 1. So, that sort of adds to it as well. It's not just the turn 2 potential. It's like that turn 1 going second, you can sort of actually take a knockout on a huge V Pokemon. But to answer your main question, the main merits are flexibility in your supporter line. That's the big thing, because when you play the Fusion Strike version, or the Fusion Energy version of the deck, you're basically limited to playing, Elisa Sparkle, Boss's Orders, and maybe like one other supporter, because you need to hit that Elisa so often. When you're playing just a double turbo version, you don't have to worry about that. You can play all these other power supporters, like we saw there, the Avery, Roxanne, Marnie, and these other disruption cards that can help you out in so many situations.
Of course, I think, we mentioned a couple of times today, disruption is such a big part of this format, trying to push your opponent away from winning their own battles with their own deck, and then hopefully you can take advantage of those poor draws and push your way into the game, especially when you're behind or had a slow start. It's one of the best ways for you to be able to get back into the game. But I think another thing that we need to talk about with the Fusion Energy Mew is that, as you said, you're sort of locked into supporters, and I think once or twice you might have seen, a one-off Marnie perhaps.
Yep. So let's and we've just had word that unfortunately it is going to be a game loss for Christian for that game. So Fabian will be taking game 1 in that series.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Obviously, 5 prize cards ahead.
Yeah.
He's going to be pretty upset with himself. However, concentration is key in these moments. You've got to stay on top of the ball, even when you're really far ahead. And I think, it's been a talking point a lot today. Even when you're calm and collected is the way to go. Even when you're ahead, you've got to look at yourself. You've got to calm things down. Sometimes even slow things down and make sure that you've got all the things on board. And sometimes play it safe. You've got time. You've got the availability to be slow. And sometimes it's the best option to have.
It is one of, I think, the most one of the least talked about key differentiators between good players and great players. People are often talking about things that separate good from great players in other terms, maybe in terms of like deck choice or like mind decisions or time saving. But one, to me especially, that's become more and more evident is this ability to take it easy when you're even in the lead, not to make sure essentially that you don't throw away a lead and instead capitalize on it, because it is so easy to get complacent when you're that far ahead, or even just not even complacent, just get excited when you're maybe put on the back foot again and make a slip up like this and be in a position like Christian is in now. Of
course, I think overextending is something that we've all done at some point, thinking, I might go, I can maybe get a turn 2 donk here or a turn 1 donk. If I KO this Pokemon, the game's in my hands completely, so I'm going to overstretch a little bit. I might drop that Crobat that I don't really want on my bench to try and draw those extra cards, and then you miss.
Yes.
And sometimes it pays off, and that's absolutely brilliant when it does. But of course, as you were saying, good and great is knowing the correct times to do those things.
Yes, it really is. So, yeah, Christian's going to have to shake this off. Obviously, it is upsetting, like you said, to have a loss when you were so far ahead. But there are still 2 more games to play, and we saw that Christian has the know-how to pilot his deck to take a commanding lead like that. So there's no reason why he can't do it again.
Yeah, of course, and I think not only the know-how, but we were both talking on the first turn. It wasn't the best Mew turn that we see.
No, it's
it was
true.
just a Mew V, an attachment to Genesect. There wasn't much going on in his hand either, but he was able to claw his way all the way back with that know-how, as you said. Knowing your matchups is key at this point in the day. You're only going to be playing against good players, and that's the key point, right? Sometimes earlier in the day, you might get a bad matchup, but a player that's a little bit more inexperienced might not know how to best you in a good matchup. But at this point, you're gonna have to guarantee that your opponent's very good, and you're gonna have to know how to capitalize.
Yes, and that is where we're going to have to see how that plays out over the course of the next 2 games. As now you see there again the sort of Fabian's fantastic V-star marker. Just can't get over that.
Note.
Yes.
And both players drawing now, setting up for game. Christian gets his basic down straight away. So does Fabian. So no mulligans this time, and the prize being laid out. I can't wait to see if there's any plot twist in this story for those. Having a look.
So
Roxanne. The Roxanne a key card last game, of course, trying to get himself back into it. Fabian only plays one of those. It's right at the top of those prizes, so maybe a twist in that tale.
It's not Fabian that has it prized, it's Christian.
They both have it prized.
Oh, wait, oh, they do? Oh, you're right, sorry, I was looking
and
on the side.
in the same spot
Oh
as
my
well.
god, my goodness.
So both Roxanne. So, well, at least we know that that's unlikely to happen
Yes,
again in this game.
that's
both
very
players
true,
not having
yes.
access to that until later on. But we start off this game, and Christian already looking a little bit better. 2 Mew down on this first turn, meaning that he's definitely going to have access to those VMAXs following, even if anything crazy happens on Fabian's side of the board in the next few turns. That Path to Peak coming down straight away. A vacuum playing out his hand, trying to draw what he can off this Genesect.
Yeah, just trying to thin out the hand as much as possible. Then 3 cards drawn from the Fusion Strike system, and it looks like Quick Ball was found off there, so obviously that's as strong as ever.
I think maybe another Genesect. I don't know. Oh, yes, of
yeah,
course.
yes, of course. And this is where the chain, of course, gets going, because once you get to like 3 on the bench and then 4 and 5, you start drawing a number of cards where it becomes a lot easier to sort of chain your Genesects together.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, once they're down as well, these Genesects usually stay here for the rest of the game. Obviously, they can be knocked out for an easy 2 prizes by the Palkia.
Yes.
Palkia would much rather be dealing with Mew throughout this matchup, so maybe the Genesect being picked up at the end. So those always on board to get more cards to Christian. And we see a Cramomatic, a Boss, and that back card, maybe a Mew VMAX, I think, those Rainbow Rays from earlier.
Yeah, yes, that is a Rainbow Mew VMAX indeed. But it looks like Christian, again, honestly, with a good enough turn 1, this is completely fine.
Yeah, a good enough turn 1. I think, again, we're used to seeing Mew absolutely pop off in those early turns and do everything that it wants. And Fabian definitely seeing a better turn, putting down those Palkias. No attachment, though, which could come back to bite him a little bit. But at least he does have 2 of those attackers down early.
Yes, so Cramomatic Tails, of course, not ideal, but it is still thins cards out of hand to draw more of a Genesect, so not the end of the world. Oh, Boss's Orders as well, so
Very
actually,
nice,
wow.
And now those Genesects just going to be looking for those answers. The Mew already on the bench with an energy on it. We just need a choice band now or a power tablet, one of the 2.
There we go.
And there it is. And Christian already off to a flying start in this game. And living up to that headline we gave it earlier, Mew is the king at taking 2 prize knockouts early. It's turn 2 and this Mew is already coming in and swinging, taking one of those key attackers in Fabian's deck.
Yes, and interestingly enough, this time Christian not opting to bench it or Choreo, going straight for Genesect number 3, wanting to draw as many cards as possible, knowing that's pretty much how the strength of his deck lies. And I think in the grand scheme of things as well, I think the Oricorio doesn't make too much of a difference for the maths, apart from in that situation that we mentioned earlier where maybe it's a full benches on both sides, Choice Belt plus the quick shooting Inteleon on a Mew VMAX, then that would prevent the KO. But maybe Christian thinking that's less important right now.
Of course, Oricorio, one of those weird situations where it minus is 20 but also plus is 20
well,
for Palkia
yeah,
by being there. So,
that's true.
You know, in very key moments it might do the business, but another Genesect filling that spot for now and drawing more cards for Christian. He's having a very dominant turn 2 here, getting the second Mew VMAX down as well, not having to look for that anymore in his following turn. And we see Trekking Shoes, a Cramomatic, and an Avery in hand at the very least. Christian with things to do. The Trekking Shoes come down and we see the DTE and he attaches that to the active Mew.
Yep, sure thing. Of course, still needs to retreat to the other Mew, given that that's the one with the Choice Belt on it, and that's the one that can take the KO on the Palkia. And then, yep, going to be Cross Fusion Strike, copying
And I think that's as good as it could have got for Christian that turn. A really dominant show from Mew VMAX. And for those in the audience watching today who may not have seen Mew work before, I think that you definitely got a full insight into the strengths of the deck on that turn.
Yeah, very, very much so. Evolution Incense coming in now as we see Fabian almost certainly going to be grabbing a Drizzile. We're going to start off with that chain of shady dealings from this Inteleon line, and going to start finding the trainers he needs to set up and start mounting a counter-attack. Now, I think it's unlikely for a KO to happen this turn. In fact, not just unlikely, given that there's no way for a quick shooting Inteleon to come down. It's not really possible, but something that could happen is something that you mentioned earlier. With you play to do 290,
yes,
and then later on with quick shooting finish off.
Of course, once again, we are in a slightly different situation now. That Mew V being on the bench this time allows Christian to be able to somewhat heal if he wants to. Obviously not able to knock out a Palkia while doing that, so you're going to have to place that quite nicely, maybe taking a 1 prize knockout and a Sobble to be able to heal. But the one thing that's scaring me a little bit for Fabian so far, getting that Capacious Bucket, that Greninja down, getting the energy in, but he's going to have to get an attack off this turn. He needs something like a Melanie to push himself forward, or get enough energy in the discard to try and get a Star Portal off.
Yes, and that's going to be absolutely vital to find this turn, because of course there are no energy on the board currently, so this really needs to happen now for Fabian to mount any kind of chance. But this is also what this deck is built to do.
Of course, there is a Capacious Bucket in hand, a Water Energy as well. The Quick Ball coming down, putting 2 now in the discard. Activating Star Portal somewhat. You can get a maximum of 3. Fabian would like that, but I think sometimes you got to bite the bullet somewhat and just take the 2 when you can.
Yes, and you know, if that's all that you have available, if it means attacking, then you know that's all that matters really.
Of course, and I think that Fabian, it's still not a great turn for him though. Obviously the Capacious Bucket coming down again. He's going to get the extra energies he needs. Not only that, by grabbing those energies, you always have access to Greninja if you want to use it on your following turns. Already used this turn, obviously, but those water energy having more than one purpose in this deck, and they're never hurtful to have in the discard pile either.
Yeah, manual attached there with the onto the Palkia in that case, and actually going to drop that Crobat V and going to draw up until 6 cards, 1 more there, and not really finding anything else. There's another Evolution Incense, so maybe we could find a second Palkia V-Star, or maybe an Inteleon for next turn, potentially.
Maybe, and the Drizzile comes down. Fabian wanting to get the band, and he is going for maximum damage output here.
So probably then going for that play that we thought of earlier. I mean, it would be very silly now if he ends up not playing the quick shooting Inteleon, but he does. Okay, he does. So yeah, this is probably what Fabian's thinking of. Let's do 290 damage to this Mew. There's a slight risk of a Psychic Leap coming in. That's the only problem that we have right now, is that Christian does have a Mew V on the bench, so that's something to consider. But other than that, this is, I guess, one of the best lines for Fabian to take.
I think the one thing that works in Fabian's favour, it is a big risk, as you say, obviously that Psychic Leap, being able to heal the Mew completely. A Mew V already on the bench to be able to evolve into another Mew V Max as well if that happens. Not only that, Fabian, by evolving both of the Sobbles, takes away the easy knockout of just being able to do 70 damage to one of those. The Drizzle slightly more. Christian is going to need a power tablet. Obviously, Choice Band not working on one prize Pokemon, only rule box Pokemon. So it is going to be a situation where Christian needs to hit out to be able to take that, and of course, Gus the Drizzle into the active as well. Yeah,
so Cranmatic looks like Tails again, so not ideal, but that's the risk you take playing Cranmatic.
We've seen both sides of the corner today. We've seen a couple people flip all heads and a couple of people flip all tails, but that is the risk of Cranmatic. For those who don't know, Cranmatic, discard a card from hand, flip a coin. If heads, you can search your deck for any card. Of course, on coin flips, if you get a heads, it's usually a very powerful effect, but unfortunately, there's always that 50-50 chance you hit tails.
Yes, important to note, it's specifically an item you have to discard as well.
Specifically an item, of course.
Yes, but yeah, but when you do get it off, it is of course a very, very powerful effect. So I'm sure Christian would have liked to hit heads there. And I don't think I've seen him hit heads this series so far, but that's something that's outside of his control, of course.
As you mentioned before, though, I think a really good point of Chronomatic is that at the very least for Mew, it does get rid of 2 cards out of the hand for that Fusion Strike system on Genesect. So it's never a full bad payoff. There's always some sort of merit of playing that card.
There really is. So now, Christian, I didn't quite see what, I assume he played a search card of some kind, but okay. So
now the heal is gone. That line of play has now disappeared for Christian, meaning that Mew is definitely susceptible to the snipe. Because the interesting thing about this deck as well, I don't think we mentioned yet, in the Fusion Energy deck, Mew is immune to sniping. Obviously, that Fusion Strike, that Fusion Energy stopping all effects landing on Mew. So that Inteleon play wouldn't even exist in that deck, but in this one with the DTE, it's very susceptible to it.
Yeah, it is. And Christian, maybe just taking the evaluation that, you know, sure, Fabian can take an easy 3 prizes next turn by, you know, KOing my bench Mew VMAX, but I can take enough prizes quickly enough for it to not matter anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what we can see that he's going full aggression here. He needs to try and win 2 games now as well. We need to remember in this time. Playing down 2 power tablets as well, being able to take a huge knockout on this Palkia V-Star. This Mew is putting on its boxing gloves. It is pounding through Fabian's deck right now. It is asking all of the questions, and can Fabian Freya come up with the answers?
It's definitely possible. We saw it. Well, one answer was, you know, Christian's answer to himself in the last game, but I think in this game, yeah, the 2 power tablets, enough to carry the Palkia V-Star, and now Fabian's answer has got to be that play with the quick shooting Inteleon. There it is. Of
course, and there it is. The quick shooting comes down. Fabian's going to know that 3 prizes. He's going to get 3 extra cards this turn from doing almost nothing, just firing off that quick shooting ability, access to more cards. He's now got energy as well to use that conceal cards ability on Greninja. He's going to need, however, to set up another Palkia V-Star.
Yes.
It's its only real attacker right now. Christian only needs 2 more cards to win the game. he needs to create a situation where that becomes quite impossible. Obviously, playing 2 power tablet already, Christian's going to have to search for those. It's not going to be as easy as last time to see those be able to go straight through a V-Star.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how this unfolds.
Yeah. It is unfortunate as well that Fabian, like so many lists we've seen, only plays 1 choice belt in this list. So, because if there was 2 choice belts available, Fabian could like go for a play this turn where scoop up net onto this Inteleon, evolve the other Drizzle obviously before it evolved into this Shady Dealings one, do quick shooting again on this new Mew, and choice belt full bench, echoing horn to fill up Christian's bench, win the game in 1 turn.
Yes, that is definitely a line he could have gone for if playing more than 1.
Yeah, but he doesn't, so it's relevant.
And we just see the Capacious Bucket coming down now, seeing more energy for Fabian. We continue to save for this deck. Energy is power, activating Greninja, getting those energies in the bin, and of course activating Melanie and drawing you 2 more cards. But not only that, Palkia still needing 1 more energy to be able to use Sub-State Spell this turn.
Yeah, so no, I almost said Super Scoop Up, my goodness. You're rubbing off on me. Scoop Up net coming in to pick up the quick shooting Inteleon.
Path comes down, unfortunately, this time, though. Something we talked about really early on in this game, this path coming down, but no Roxanne to follow it up to really lock Christian in. It's only going to be a Marnie.
Which still
is good.
Yes.
But I think a -2 would be very grateful in Fabian's hands right now.
Yeah.
However, the Marnie drawing Fabian to 2 cross switcher.
Okay.
So that means he does have Gust to be able to perhaps take an easy knockout on a Genesect.
Yeah.
If he's able to get through a Mew. Obviously, the Mew in his game. If he's able to take 2 Genesect knockouts, is another line for him to win the game. So and just hitting into the Mew.
Yes, and now it's up to Christian. Does Christian have an out to win? He doesn't need much. Some kind of switching out and a gusting out would work.
That Crobat on the bench looking awfully tasty as well.
Yes.
190 on its own will be enough to KO that Crobat. Just need a boss, some sort of gust here. It's not in the Rotom phone, so we won't see it, but we might see that path bumped. If not now, the next turn.
Yeah.
If this Mew can survive.
Finding the Lost City off the Rotom phone, so going to put that on top of the deck. Sadly, I don't think there's a way for Christian to draw it this turn, so it is going to have to be a 1-turn thing, and this will give Fabian the opportunity to potentially take this game and series here, because all Christian can really do is retreat and pass. So
and once again, we play that game of hide and seek, going to the bench, hoping that Fabian does not have the answers here. The evolution incense, though, spelling trouble for him. That Drizzile probably hitting the hand now, being able to grab exactly what he needs. Is it a boss's orders?
It's looks like a double cross switcher, and yeah, that will be it. Fabian will take the series 2-0 after just going for the scoop of net to bring it back, and that unfortunate end for Christian there played his heart out, but Fabian, our homegrown hero, as we call him so often, has moved on into day 2 in this tournament.
Yeah, he's going to be really happy with that. We were talking how sweet it would feel in your home country being able to potentially go far in this, and obviously day 2 is the next step. Fabian now looking at his last round. Will it be another ID? Will it be an ID? Will it be a win? Who knows? All he knows is he's playing tomorrow.
Yeah, he's playing tomorrow, and he has one more round today as well to kind of, as we already discussed, maybe even improve his record and make it so that that day 2 chance and getting into top 8 is more likely.
Yeah, me and Ross described it as a future you will love past you more if you give them an easier day on day 2.
It's a very good way of putting it, yeah.
You might be able to go out for a nice meal tonight, stay out an extra hour if you've got that extra win. You don't have to focus quite as much tomorrow. It's going to be an easier day, but of course, getting into top 8 on just that 6.2, very difficult to do. However, not impossible. We've seen it done countless times before. But, of course, Fabian may be looking for another win here today just to solidify himself a little bit better.
And especially now that you know you're in day 2, right? There's no point in going for an intentional draw now. Maybe if you know that it's the only way to guarantee your way into day 2, then yes. But now you are guaranteed. So you might as well play your next round and try to improve your record if you can.
Of course. And I think we are posed here for another great winners interview. Fabian is just waiting for us to call him over, and we'll be right back, and he'll speak to you all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am here with our feature match day 2, achiever, I guess, Fabian. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I was just joking around, of course, before we started. I could have sworn I only interviewed yesterday. Of course, we've seen the interview that we did together yesterday, and now here I am interviewing you again, saying you are the homegrown hero. You have made it into day 2. How does that feel to you, like being sort of making it into day 2 at a regional so close to home?
I feel really happy, especially about yesterday. Maybe people saw it, but I was supposed to play Zoroark Vista normally. But at late night, my car got broken and someone stole everything in my car, including my cards, my clothes, my bag. I have nothing left. So I couldn't play Zoroark Vista, and I was so shocked. So I played Palkia, and I didn't sleep that much, and I was really tired this morning. I feel really bad for what happened in game 1 because I could have. Normally, I should have stopped the Roxanne, but at least the negative karma I got yesterday, change it to a good karma for today.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm sure that everyone at home is sort of hearing that and absolutely reeling. That should have obviously never happened. Like my goodness. And after all that as well, to still fight your way through to day 2, that must be resonate really emotionally in that case.
To be honest, this morning I wasn't thinking that I would be able to make day 2 because I was not mentally ready to play.
No, absolutely.
But I did it somehow. So at the end it's a nice day.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear. And well, obviously this brings a lot more somber note to things than perhaps usually, but I think it's important to be honest about these things, and I think it speaks volumes to your strength of character to even after through all that still be able to come through and do a performance like this. And I think I speak for everyone watching at home when I say you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank
honestly.
you.
No problem.
Thank you.
So on that, is there anything else you'd like to say before to close off? You're given everything, but I imagine if not, probably best to just sort of leave it to it.
The game 1 what happened, and then game 2, I got pretty lucky that he bricked off the Marnie path because Roxanne was prized. So I was okay, I need to Marnie, and I got lucky for this thing. Overall, I would like to thank especially all my friends who helped me to have 60 cards to play with at least. Yeah. And my girlfriend who helped me a lot with what happened yesterday.
Yeah, that's more than fair. So everyone at home, it's a very somber note to end this round on. We hope that you will continue to tune in. We have got one more round of Pokemon action for you, one more winner in to show you all. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with round 9.